So who's blind about Uber's potential success? The users or the investors?
Xbox,
Twitter, Uber,
Postmates,
Netflix, MoviePass,
Google, Facebook, eBay,
DoorDash,
Apple, Amazon, Airbnb,
The Apptrepreneur. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and today we're actually going to be talking about two topics because I read two articles that were in some ways very different from one another, and yet they were so fascinating when you put them side by side. In one article, an investor actually encourages people like, hey, you know what? You shouldn't be selling your Uber stock. You're a fool if you are. Here's why they're going to make a lot of money. And on the other side, you saw Uber doing an action that would normally suggest that, hey, things probably aren't going as good as you'd like them to be going at Uber. So we're going to kind of look at them, and I'm going to share my take on it. However, before we talk about any of that, let's have a word from our sponsors. And today's video is sponsored by Maximo, the rideshare automation app that allows drivers to safely and easily accept ride requests for Uber, Lyft, and Postmates. Whether you drive for a single platform or multiple platforms, Maximo's custom settings can help you drive more efficient, less distracted, and help you maximize your earnings. It will automatically accept one trip, turn off the other apps, and when your trip is over, it will end it, open the other apps, and accept the next trip, all without you having to touch your phone. Use referral code APP60 and get your first month free when you subscribe to Maximo. Investors who dumped Uber stock last week are idiots. Here's what's really going on. Now, this, it should be noted, is an opinion piece, obviously, and I'm going to have to say, from personal experience, you don't make a great case for calling certain people idiots. I mean, granted, I do that to the company all the time. That's kind of different because that's a massive corporation, not a particular person. Although I do feel there are certain key individuals like Tony Zhu and maybe this guy right here who are not particularly qualified to have the job that they have. But here's what Business Insider wrote about it, or who wrote this article? Oh, I don't know. They didn't even credit this one. Uber stock dipped 8% last week after the company recorded a larger than expected net loss of $5.2 billion. It added to the impression that Uber is simply burning cash, subsidizing cheap taxi rides to grab market share, with no real idea of how to turn it into a sustainable, profitable business, which I, by the way, believe is the case, but we'll, touch upon that more a little later. I think there's a meme around, which is, can Uber ever be profitable? I certainly heard that meme along with other CEO Dara Khosrowshahi told analysts on the earnings call last week. Oh, geez. See, this is Dara being very, very oblivious. Like, oh, is there a meme out there? Like, is there a meme that Uber can ever be profitable? It's like, no, Dara, it's not a meme. It's investors. It's their own stockholders. It's the drivers. It's the New York Times. It's Washington Post. It's Fox News. There are a number of people who are questioning whether or not you can be profitable. It's not a meme. I personally have never seen an Uber profitability meme because I think the general public doesn't care. The general public did meme the whole, in the 60s, what were we told? Don't talk to strangers and don't get into strange cars. How do you get around in 2019? You call a stranger and you get into a stranger's car. That's a meme, I know, but I don't think the general public is actually that interested in the financial affairs. So this is just Dara being dastardly, if you will. In fact, Uber didn't lose any money at all. Oh, great, this will be great. It is more likely the case that some investors misunderstood the nature of the loss. It was a paper write-off, not an actual loss of cash. Well, I've heard that before, and yet this paper write-off happens every single year, every single 3 months. In fact, Uber grew its cash on hand by $5.3 billion in quarter two, from $6.4 billion at the end of last year to $11.7 billion by the end of quarter two. The loss was mostly a non-cash stock-based compensation expense of $3.9 billion. Issuing stock compensation to employee costs the company next to nothing. Accounting rules require it to be written up as an expense only so that investors can have an accurate idea of the value of newly listed stock being given out as compensation. No money actually leaves Uber's coffers. Yeah, makes sense, right? That wasn't confusing. That wasn't confusing at all. Take a look at Uber's cash flow statement. The The net loss from operations was just 1.6 billion. That's a lot of money, but it's not 5 billion. Uber could easily afford that loss because it took in about 8 billion from the proceeds of its IPO, the cash flow statement says. In other words, the company isn't losing money, it's the opposite. It's gathering in enormous sums. Now, this has a little asterisk right there. What does the asterisk actually say? Oops, there. Sorry, I sometimes that happens. Clarification. This story originally described Uber as a cash printing machine. That phrasing was intended as a rhetorical device, but some readers took it a bit too seriously, so we changed the wording to gathering in enormous sums. Okay, whatever. You know what? I would still argue that, yeah, you can be bringing in a lot of money and still be losing it. Keep in mind, Uber has been in startup mode this whole time, and they have been raising capital for years. They're still spending more than they're bringing in. That's the thing. That's why they're having the losses. In fact, you know what? We don't even need to get into the rest of this article because here's the thing. For all this guy saying, hey, Uber's fine, everything's cool, they're not losing money, Uber, by action, seems to be suggesting another story. Because they are freezing engineering hires. Let's look at this one. This is probably the most important one. Uber is freezing hiring for software engineers and product managers across its US and Canadian workforce, the company acknowledged to Bloomberg on Friday. The shift was reported by Yahoo earlier in the day. The freeze does not apply to Uber's autonomous vehicle and freight shipping divisions. The news comes a day after Uber reported second quarter operating losses of 5.4 billion, a new record for the company. That figure exaggerates Uber's quarterly burn rate because it includes more than 4 billion in one-time charges related to Uber's initial public offering. Still, excluding IPO-related charges still leaves about 1.2 billion in operating losses, worse than the 1 billion the firm lost in the first quarter. Uber recently laid off 400 marketing workers, many of whom I'm happy to say are getting jobs at other companies. According to Yahoo, Uber employees are worried that this could be a prelude to broader cuts as the company struggles to stem its losses. I believe it is. Quote, during an all-hands meeting, a question about potential layoffs in the engineering department was also raised, but executives didn't provide any timelines, Yahoo's Crystal Hu reports. Uber is in no immediate financial danger, despite years of losses. Uber had 13.7 billion in the bank at the end of the second quarter, a figure boasted by 8 billion in Uber's IPO. With that much cash in the bank, Uber can continue at its current burn rate for more than 2 years, but CEO Dara Khosrowshahi will face pressure from Wall Street to stem Uber's losses. So here's the thing. This is dangerous for, a really obvious reason. Uber is clearly not making money, and they've been very upfront about how they're not making money, despite what this guy says. Uber lays off 400 people of their marketing department. Not a big deal. Well, I mean, it's a big deal that people lost their jobs. But, it's marketing. Like, who really cares? However, the fact that they are freeze hiring software engineers, that should be of concern to any investors because Uber is constantly telling everyone, we're about the future. And shareholders, like other investors, saying Uber's about the future. It's the future. It's the future. They will be profitable in the future. They will have these innovations in the future. Future. And what are they doing? Hiring freeze. That is Uber not investing in the future. The future everyone holds so much hope will actually turn it around. So I think the layoffs, the hiring freeze, and by the way, I suspect there will be more layoffs before the third quarter results are shared. I think Uber is in a little bit of a wake-up mode right now. Like people say, oh, they're in startup mode. No, they're in wake-up mode. They're definitely finding out that you can't be essentially giving away a product. Sorry, I just hit the table. You cannot be giving away a product and expect to make money. In fact, here's a fun little article that's about a couple days old. So we're all killing Uber just by using it. And they said, Uber nor any other ride-hail company has never earned a profit. I think they should have said ever, but whatever. Before its IPO, Uber kept a tight lid on its profits and losses. From what some analysts have revealed, the numbers were abysmal. Uber had a net loss of $2.6 billion in 2015, $3.8 billion in 2016, $4.5 billion in 2017, and $3.9 billion in 2018. So far, Uber has lost over $6.3 billion in 2019. Commentators in Uber have been quick to argue the lion's share of the quarter's loss comes from one-time costs related to going public, but this is not the first time an accounting trick has been evoked. In first quarter 2018, Uber claimed its first profit after selling failed operations to Southeast Asia and Russia for approximately $3 billion, and its S-1 prospectus released before the IPO. Uber claimed there was a $5 billion profit improvement that turned a nearly $4 billion operating loss in 2017 into a $987 million profit in 2018. The $5 billion is largely on paper. It comes from non-tradable equity and debt it gained after selling its operations to competitors in China, Russia, and SE Asia, but also Uber's valuation of how much those competitors and equity debt they gave Uber was worth. In other words, Uber has deliberately used accounting tricks to seem more profitable in investors and the public. Uber isn't more efficient, it just has more investors. As an economic model, Uber is actually more inefficient than any standard taxi cab company. The cost for taxi cab companies can be split into 4 parts: vehicle, corporate, fuel, and labor costs. Uber shifts vehicle costs onto drivers, but costs end up being higher for drivers because they can't manage assets, as well as centrally manage multinationals like Uber. In theory, shifting costs onto drivers saves Uber money in the short term, but in actuality, costs more as drivers end up fighting for higher compensation or benefits. Uber has higher corporate costs than standard taxi cab companies since it is a global corporation with an army of lobbyists, public relations professionals, app development, and IT staff. Executive staff, and real estate costs. Taxi cab companies can negotiate for bulk discounts on fuel, but Uber abandons this and shifts the cost totally onto the driver, who, of course, I'm interjecting myself, is getting really pissed off that, if the fuel goes up, their rates go down. Uber's drivers' costs are lower than the traditional model, but only because it pays starvation wages and doesn't offer traditional benefits like healthcare 401. So this is a very fascinating article, but here's the thing that's important. Uber's investors want a monopoly at any cost. Herein lies the ultimate point. Uber's investors have thrown so much money at Uber because they are making a simple bet. Uber will become a monopoly. The only thing standing in its way is that it has no idea how to make any money. So it's one of those situations we have where, and this is why it's good to read a bunch of different articles in the next couple of years as Uber rides this whole public, being a public company thing to its fruition. There are people who say, look to the future. There are some people who are saying, you can't do this. But Uber is a company that the more users they get, the more money they lose. The investors will, of course, say, hey, it's just a paper write-off. It doesn't mean anything. But the thing is, it does mean something. A loss is a loss. On the positive, it's not like I have ever witnessed any company that was just loved to death. No company I can think of whatsoever that was just loved to death. But anyway, we're going to leave it right there. What do you folks think? Do you think that Uber's in good shape? Do you think the write-off was not that big of a deal? Do you believe that the hiring freeze doesn't really mean anything at all? I would love to know. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. YouTube doesn't recommend me anymore. So not just my channel, it helps everybody's channels out if you share the videos. If gas prices are getting a little concerning for you, check out the Get Upside app below. It's totally free, but you get cash back on every gas purchase. If you want more content from me that's not rideshare related, check out my other YouTube channels, Kevin T. Rodriguez, the Apptrepreneur Vlogs, and Autograph Hound. And finally, if you want to talk to me or any other person in the rideshare industry, check us out on Facebook at the Apptrepreneur Hangouts. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.